A court in the UK has ruled you cannot be gender neutral on your passport, and it seems like it should be obvious as to why you can't be gender neutral on your passport. Yet there are still some countries that, for some reason, are allowing people to put X's on their passports. This, to me, makes literally no sense. Do you know why we have on your ID your gender? It's not because we want to insult you by misgendering you. It's because we're trying to identify you, but also it has to do with medical issues. Men and women, males and females, require different kinds of medical treatments. In fact, I believe I did a segment on this a while ago for Subverse. It was in 1992. The U.S. passed a law saying that clinical trials had to be performed on men and women, males and females, because they affect them differently. If you pass it on the floor and they start looking through your wallet, maybe you're ambiguous and gender neutral. They still need to know what kind of body you have because you literally have different organs. It's not an exaggeration. And so if they're going to try and do something to help you, they're not going to open your pants. They should look at your ID and see if you're male or female, but people want to change their IDs. And you know what, man, look, to an extent, I think it's fine, but you understand why passports are a bigger issue. Not every country recognizes the same rules and the same, customs, cultures. So if you're going to try and enter a foreign country with an X on your passport, don't be surprised if they say no. I'm not kidding. I've thought about this because I've traveled so much, and I was like, if somebody took a passport, like if you can get your driver's license to say M or F on. I think it's dangerous for medical reasons, but ultimately I don't care if people want to do whatever they want to do. Fine, it's whatever. The passport thing was different. Like if the United States is willing to be, secular and leftist and recognize a lot of these ideas, what are you going to do when you fly to, say, I don't know, like the Middle East? I don't know why you would, but some people do. Or maybe you go to a country, in Eastern Europe, because many of them are still much more conservative and won't recognize this. And they're going to look at it and they're going to be like, what is this? Sorry, you can't come in. When you're dealing with foreign countries, you are going to them and asking for a favor. May I enter your country for these reasons? And they, at their own discretion, can say no. To me, it's absurd. But, the courts agreed. What's interesting is that it's in the Netherlands. I think I mentioned this. They put an X on your passport. I got to tell you, man, these people in the UK, in the US, these leftists live in their own reality. It's a fraction of Twitter that has amplified these fringe voices from the corners of the earth, of Western democracy, that normally can't speak out, that if they went on the street and said these things, they'd be ridiculed. But online, they find each other, and then it looks like there's a large community. Now, technically, there is. But when you rally around loud, angry lunatics, don't be surprised when regular people think you've lost your mind. Now, let me read this story. Now, I'm not talking about whether or not someone is gender neutral or trans or like that. By all means, you do you, and you live the way you want to live. I'm all about that freedom, man. If you want to walk around doing your thing, dressing how you want to dress, I really don't care. You want to say nasty things to other people? Really? Don't care. It's when you cross that line into start, attacking people or using authoritarianism is where I sort of draw the line. My criticism here is specifically about how you think you're going to be able to go to a foreign country and ask them a favor. And if they don't recognize your culture, why would you bother getting a passport in that regard? Let's read. Metro says, a court has ruled that people cannot have passports with their gender unspecified. Campaigner Christy Ellen Kane brought the challenge to the Court of Appeal, arguing that passports with X instead of a gender should be available. They believe the UK's passport application process, which requires individuals to indicate whether they are male or female, is inherently discriminatory. It doesn't matter because it's not about your laws. It's about international treaties. If you want to get your ID to say QX whatever, then go ahead and do it. At a hearing in December, 3 senior judges were told that the government's current policy on gender-neutral passports is unlawful and breaches human rights laws. This individual said, X passports, I regret to inform that the appeal court has ruled in the UK government's favor in a judgment handed down this morning. We intend to seek permission for the case to be heard at the Supreme Court. Ellen Kane took the case to the Court of Appeal after judicial review action was dismissed by the High Court in June 2018. The appeal, which was contested by the Home Office, centers on the lawfulness of the current policy administered by Her Majesty's Passport Service. It's part of the Home Office. It was argued that the policy breaches the right to respect private life and the right not to be discriminated against on the basis of gender or sex under the European Convention on Human Rights. At the December hearing, Kate Gallifent for Ellen Kane told the judges, "This is an important case in the anxious context of the proper understanding and respect for the intimate human rights of the affected class, persons whose gender identity is neither exclusively male or female." But Lady Justice Eleanor King read out a ruling at the Court of Appeal today saying, "There can be little more central to a citizen's private life than gender. In this case, however, the passport issue cannot reasonably be considered in isolation, given that the driver for change is the notion of respect for gender identity across the board. The court finds that there was no positive obligation on the state to provide an X marker in order to ensure the right of the appellant to respect for private life. Therefore, the current policy of HMPO does not amount to an unlawful breach of the appellant's Article 8 private life rights. The court accepts that the issue goes to gender identity and is an issue central to a person's Article 8 private life." Man, I have no idea what that means. I'm not from the UK, but let's read anyway. The judge, however, was right in deciding that the state had a relatively wide margin of appreciation when striking the balance between private and public interests, or convention rights, notwithstanding that an issue of individual's identity is at stake. The court finds that the X marker is just one part of a bigger picture that requires a coherent, structured approach across all the areas where the issue of non-binary gender arises, particularly given the discussions as to whether there should be any gender boxes on passports or indeed other documents at all. There is not yet any consensus across Council of Europe states in relation to either the broad issue of the recognition of non-binary people or the narrow issue of the use of X markers on passports. Although there is momentum within Europe in relation to how the status of non-binary people is to be recognized, and the time may come when the fair balance has shifted. In relation to the alleged discrimination under Articles 8 and 14, the court found that the question of whether the difference in treatment was objectively justified would result in the same answer as that in relation to Article 8 private life, and that the current policy in relation to the issuing of X-marked passports does not, therefore, amount to unlawful discrimination under Article 14. Okay, let me break that down for you. If you've made it through all that, my general understanding is they said something quite simple and logical. For one, maybe in the future this will change as other countries in the EU start to recognize how, we accept passports, but there needs to be a structure as to what makes sense and why we have these things in the first place. Perhaps the issue should be the removal of the gender marker entirely, instead of just adding an X. Laws and precedent need to exist in order for these changes to be made. For the time being, there are countries on this planet that do not recognize non-binary, and they don't care what you think you are. They want to appropriately identify you. Otherwise, they won't let you in their country. I do not understand why anyone would try to get this done on their passport when dealing with an international system, international treaties that may result in a country looking at it and saying, denied, I don't know what an X is. When you come into the United States, they fingerprint you. I think all they do is take your picture and fingerprint you. They might even take pictures of your eyes or something. I don't know. If you're an American citizen, you don't get your fingerprints taken because we have a constitutional right. But visitors don't have that right. They do have rights once they come in the country, not when they're trying to enter our borders. It is the discretion of the border guard. Therefore, if you are from the UK and you get an X on your passport, it's entirely possible an American, and we're talking about a Western liberal constitutional republic. I mean, liberal as in freedom, not liberal as in the left. It is entirely possible that this guy at the border is a conservative. And he says, what's X? And you say, I'm non-binary. And he says, I don't know what that is. Are you a man or a woman? And then you don't answer. They say, denied. And it's their discretion. I know people who have tried to enter countries and they have not been denied because it is the officer who says yes or no. So for me, I get it. If your identity is more important to you than actually entering the country, then that's fine. Like, do your thing. I just think, for one, I can agree with the court. I don't know how you're supposed to function as a society with no rules. Like, the laws they've passed in New York are so overarching and so broad, they literally don't make sense. Now, they'll probably be challenged by courts, but how do you enforce this? How is a business supposed to know what they can or can't do if the rules, literally in New York, the law is you can't discriminate based on self-expression? What does that even mean? That's literally the law. It says gender identity. And then in the law, gender identity is your personal self-expression. So what? You could walk around dressed like that Borat in that bathing suit and say, it's my self-expression, don't discriminate. Well, someone will challenge it in the courts. Someone will say yes or no, and it'll finally start to figure out where it is. But for the time being, you can literally take anyone to, I mean, they say you can sue a ham sandwich, doesn't mean you're going to win. But right now, you can claim a human rights violation in New York for the most ridiculous reasons because these laws have become so absurdly broad. I'll leave it there. Look, I got no beef, no issue with anybody who wants to live however they want to live, do their thing. I'm all about freedom, so much respect and, no problem here. The issue here is international treaties and recognizing your culture doesn't dominate the earth. You are not a cultural supremacist. Your culture is not supreme. Other countries have rights to their beliefs. And if you want to get a passport to go to another country, don't be surprised when they give you the boot. I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment will be tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thanks for hanging out. I will see you all next time.